Hi. This morning I'm going to talk about education and neuroscience, both generally as the field's developing, but also the specific work that we've been doing in this field. The Wellcome Trust, there we go. The Wellcome Trust, for those of you who don't know, is the second largest charitable foundation globally, with the aim of improving health. And it does that by funding lots of biomedical research, but also by funding work in the social science and humanities, funding lots of education work, doing lots of engagement work, and also lots of policy work. So I'm going to talk through a few things this morning. Firstly, what has neuroscience got to do with education? What impact is it having on education at the moment? The work that we've been doing, and then thinking about the future. So, what has neuroscience got to do with education? Well, if education's about learning something, be it knowledge or a skill, and neuroscience is the study of the nervous system and the brain, then they're pretty linked, in my opinion. And it's not new to kind of talk about the brain in relation to education. People have been discussing this, critiquing it, debating it for lots of years. There's loads of research papers out there with titles such as A Bridge Too Far, It's a Prime Time to Build a Bridge, A Two-Way Path is Possible, Building the Bridge from Both Ends. So lots of people have been talking about this bridge, but not many people have been building it. And this is kind of understandable because it's probably only really in the last 10 years that the understanding from neuroscience has evolved significantly, that we can start to think about how it might have implications for the classroom. And this is really exciting, and there's lots of potential, and it's really understanding, you can understand why teachers, why policymakers, why technologists want to start applying some of these ideas to education. But my word of warning that will go throughout this presentation really is about waiting and doing the research and finding out whether these things are actually going to be helpful and impactful in the classroom. And the other thing I must say just before I go on is that I'm not saying in any way that neuroscience alone is the answer and is going to solve all our problems or can tell us everything about the classroom. That's a very complex ecosystem. But neuroscience is a kind of new-ish field where we can start using that alongside psychology, alongside educational research, and alongside teachers' knowledge to build something really good for the future and see if we can start improving learning in the classroom. So, what impact is neuroscience having on education? So we're at an education conference. I thought I'd wait and see what you guys know. So I'm going to put a few statements up on the board, as any good teacher does. And what I would like you to do is just simply raise your hand if you agree with the statement, if you think it's true. So we mostly only use 10% of our brains. Hands up if you agree. Okay. I will just show you this. These are some stats. I'll show you the paper this comes from in a second. This was a survey of teachers in 5 countries, and those are the percentage of the teachers that agree. It's not really working, but I can tell you that this is not true. Ooh, there we go. Even sat there now, you might think you're not doing very much, but your brain is still in control of you breathing, in control of your heart rate, keeping you sitting upright, perhaps paying attention, maybe not, maybe mind wandering, but it's all using your brain, all parts of your brain. So that's one of these myths. Second one, individuals learn better when they receive information in their preferred learning style. So visually, by seeing, auditory, by hearing, or kinesthetically by doing things. Hands up if you agree with that statement. Okay, you can see across the board, teachers in lots of countries agreed with you. Yeah, so it is true that people have a preference. You might prefer to learn something in a particular way. You might feel that you're a visual learner and that you learn better by using stuff visually. You do have a preference, but research has showed that you don't learn it any better if you're showing the material in that particular way. Moving on. One last one. Differences in hemispheric dominance, left or right brain, can help to explain individual differences amongst learners. Hands up if you agree. We might have started to see a pattern. I don't know. So here are some stats, really high in the UK. Again, it's not true if you hear things about integrating the right or left brain, or you hear things about one side of your brain is the logical side and the other side is more mathsy, or creative. It's just not true. And I'm going to skip the next one. But this one is true. Okay. I can talk to you more about that. If you want to see more about these neuromyths, this is a really good paper written by Paul Howard-Jones last year. Got lots of interest on social media, and it goes through lots of what these common neuromyths are. So, neuromyths, where do they come from? Are they a problem, and what to do about them? So, generally, they often come from some kind of science that's been over or misinterpreted, and they tend to stick around excuse me, because they're easy to understand or easy to kind of implement in the classroom. Are they a problem? Well, if you think you only use 10% of your brain, is that a problem? Possibly not. It's not accurate. But when I first started teaching about 9 years ago, and this was common in lots of schools across the UK, I'm not sure about in other countries, students were asked to fill out a questionnaire about how they learnt and did they like learning in this way. And teachers were given us a spreadsheet with students and which was their preferred learning style. And teachers were encouraged to make sure that they were providing information for those students in that particular way. And I'd say that's a bit of a problem because teachers were potentially wasting time or feeling that they should be doing something that wasn't actually benefiting students. A positive outcome was that lessons became more diverse. People thought about a range of activities, but at the same time, students would say things like, "Miss, I'm not doing this activity because I'm a kinesthetic learner." And so students were themselves limiting themselves and not getting the benefit of learning in multiple modalities, which is the way that you learn best by using different ways of learning the same information. So what to do about them? Well, I might come on to that a bit later and what we're going to do. So the research is carrying on, but lots of research in this area is still at the stage of it's about cells in a petri dish. It might be about finding out about what's going on in animals, or very small-scale trials of humans, but maybe in a lab. Not much is going on in the classroom. And so we set up this initiative, the Education Neuroscience Initiative, with the Education Endowment Foundation, who are the What Works Centre for Education in the UK. And we did it for two reasons. We wanted to build the evidence of what works in education, informed by neuroscience. And we also wanted to help support teachers and general educators with what we do and don't know. So we firstly launched a funding round to get people to apply for money to do research in this space, and all the projects had to have some evidence that they worked, some pilot data, but they also had to be scalable and affordable, so that if we found that these things worked, that they could be rolled out, that they could lead to policy change, that they could be available to everybody. And there's a particular emphasis as well around disadvantaged students. So we wanted something that would benefit all and try and close the socioeconomic gap. And all of our projects are also paired with an independent evaluator. So you have your project team and you also have an evaluation team. And that evaluation team helps to shape the methodology that's used to make sure it's robust educationally. They also collect some of the first data, and they also report on that data first. So there is no chance for the project team to maybe overstate claims about what they've found. So we funded 6 projects, and these are all taking place in around 50 to 100 schools each in the UK. I won't talk about all of them, but I'll just whiz through a couple. Fit to Study is looking at great research around how more vigorous activity can influence learning short and long term. We know this from lots of research in animals, from small group studies, but nobody's done anything in the UK on this scale. And so we're looking at changing what happens in PE lessons and then measuring the short and long term outcomes of those students. Teen sleep has had a fair bit of media coverage, and that's looking at, we know, researchers know, neuroscientists will tell you, we know that teens have a different sleep-wake cycle. Their circadian rhythm is altered by a couple of hours, so they don't feel tired in the evenings. It's really hard to get them up in the morning. They're not fit to ready and start learning early in the morning. So we're testing a delayed school start time against a sleep education program where we're just teaching them about the importance of their sleep, how to get good sleep, about using technology just before bed, and how that might affect their sleep, not in a positive way. And looking again at their academic outcomes. These are two projects which are both in primary schools. They're training very young children, one about a different way to learn reading, one about training their inhibition so that they're better equipped when they learn science and maths to come across, when they come across these kind of counterintuitive ideas. Engaging the brain's reward system from Paul Howard-Jones. This one is maybe of particular interest because it's taking ideas from gaming, the idea of why games are so engaging and motivating, and it's neuroscientists have discovered it's this idea of uncertain rewards, so not the consistency that we see in schools around the world of you get something right, you get a point, but you get something right and you can game that point. You might double it, you might get nothing. And they've shown that that ramps up dopamine in your brain in the reward system, makes it very engaging, motivating, and hopefully a very teachable moment for students. And the last one is spaced learning, and this is being actually led by a school in collaboration with neuroscientists and psychologists, and they're looking at ideas from neuroscience and psychology and trying to work out what really works in the classroom in terms of repeated learning and what the spaces are between that learning. So that's just a quick oversight. If you want more information, happy to talk about it. Very quickly, I'll mention the Education Endowment Foundation has a very useful toolkit that talks about different interventions. It talks about the cost of those interventions and the evidence of the level of the evidence and how effective it is. And they've got a set of projects all around digital technologies, which you might be interested in. So that's the research. We have to sit and wait now for 4 years to find out how some of the outcomes of those studies, what they'll be. And we're just as interested to find out if they're effective as if they're not, because we'll then know to say to teachers, don't bother changing your school start time, it has no impact. So what we're doing, we're trying to support teachers with what we know, because we don't want these neuromyths being perpetuated. We think teachers need to be empowered with really what we do know. So we did something earlier this year, set it up very quickly, and it was an online event where we had neuroscientists and psychologists online, and teachers could log on and ask them any questions about the brain or about the brain or learning. And we had about 7,000 people engage with it, but we know that that's not enough. So what we're doing is we're currently crowdsourcing information from neuroscientists, psychologists, educational academics across the globe, and we're going to develop some hopefully really good resources for teachers that give them a summary of the research area, be it reward, motivation, about learning differences, that it will also give them an idea of how developed that research is. Is it just in cells in a lab, or is it being tested in the classroom? And finally, it gives them also some other reputable sources of information to go to, so that people are finding out about research and scientific findings that are factual, hopefully. And then we're going to do another online event where we get neuroscientists, psychologists, educational academics, and hopefully by enabling this conversation, scientific findings won't be over or misinterpreted. People can ask the questions about the research. If you want to be involved in that, follow us on Twitter, find out what we're doing. So the future, very quickly, there were a couple of journals already in this space, Mind, Brain and Education and Trends in Neuroscience and Education. 2 more are coming out this and next year. This is very much a developing, building area of research. The Education Endowment Foundation did a lit review, so this paper gives lots of ideas about all the bits of areas of neuroscience that could be applied to education, the distance from the classroom, and how solid that evidence is. So you can find out a bit more there. We also had a phone call with the White House earlier this year. They're very interested. They're working out what they should be doing in this space. So it's very exciting, but early stages. So more about the future. Quickly flip to my notes because I can't remember all of this. There's lots of interesting areas that are very promising in this field of research. Things about stimulation of young children and how that actually has a huge impact on their development, and that might have big implications in lower and middle income countries. Recognizing that teenagers and adolescents is a very distinct time and they might need different things in terms of to support their learning compared to adults. We're learning lots more about reward, motivation, attention, about neuroplasticity, how our brains are very plastic and how they can continue to learn throughout life, and how that actual cognitive demand on your brain might be good at staving off neurological degenerative diseases later in life. There's work around fostering better creativity, around specifics in maths, English and science, the impact of stress on learning, earlier screening for learning disorders, and hopefully also that this will become something that is much more embedded and ingrained in teacher training. So very quickly, the issues, I think, are that research takes time. We shouldn't overinterpret individual studies, and this translation is a new work in progress. But there's loads of potential, lots of exciting opportunities, but we need multidisciplinary teams working on this, including educational technologists. We need to get good information out to teachers. We also need to give them the tools to ask the right questions so that they can ask what things are based on. Are there studies? Has research been done? And we might end up with some things that might lead to some very interesting policy changes, but that's a few years down the line. So I'll just leave you with this quote, which I quite liked. I won't read it. I'll let you read it. Thank you very much.